Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Need a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Reeves, second by Lundy. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Actions by consent. Do we have a motion to accept action by consent?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion made by Daniels, second by Williams. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, financial priorities with COVID relief.
Okay, you have on your tables or in your folder, if your folder was on your table, our SEEK forecast for this coming academic year. So we'll take a look at that first. And of course, we have a PowerPoint problem. Can't get to the next slide. Here we go. As you know, the SEEK funding is our main source of funding for our normal school year based on our average daily attendance. So I have provided you a copy of our SEEK forecast, which we are pretty pleased with. KDE gave districts, as you all remember, you voted on it. They gave us an option to look at the 2018-19 school year and go with that SEEK forecast for the upcoming year, or to go with last year's. And there were so many factors in the calculations from last year with the large amount of NTI that we chose to go with the same forecast as 18-19. So this is actually the forecast, and as I said, again, we're pretty pleased with it because it has those additional monies in our at-risk and our different categories that we always try to make sure we're up on. In addition to that, we're very happy to talk about 3 actual funding sources in addition to our SEEK money that has been provided just to help us with costs that we may have incurred or will incur because of the COVID and the changes that we're having to make. We have our GEARS fund, and for our districts, that's $30,000 additional. And we have our ESSER fund, which gives us in Barberville $177,111 additional dollars. So we have those 2 funds, but we have a third fund as well. FEMA, simply because COVID is a disaster and our state is in a state of emergency because of COVID, we have an opportunity to have FEMA to help offset some of the costs that those other 2 funds do not. So let me give you an example a little bit of some of the things that we have already looked at. Of course, this group is very good about looking at budgets, as you all know. And one of the things that we have already done is ordered all the necessary things that meet the CDC guidelines as they exist now. And I will say, as I tell my teachers and my administrators as well, and our parents that we had surveys with, things will change. Be flexible, because this year things will change. So what we do know is that we have to provide things that meet the CDC state public health guidelines. So we have purchased things like masks and gloves. We purchased fogger machines, disinfectant machines, in order to be timely in disinfecting our classrooms and any space that kids are. We purchased those for our school buses, so as soon as our buses are emptied, they will be sprayed. We purchased our thermometers that are required. We have to take temperatures of our children every day, as well as our employees, as far as the guidelines go at this point. We've already purchased those. We have changed some ventilation systems upstairs that needed it to start with, and did that so that the ventilation system upstairs in the high school was better. That is all covered under those funds as well. We have actually began to purchase new classroom furniture. That was much needed anyway, but simply because we have to try to get as many kids in a seat as we can and maintain that 6 feet social distancing, we have purchased standalone desks and seats instead of tables, because our labs are consumer science classroom. One of our math classrooms all have tables, and you can't sit 2 kids at a table. So that means that it really eliminates some kids that could be in a seat on the days that you still have to meet the guidelines and the social distance with your students. So there's lots of things that we have already purchased to make sure that we can meet those guidelines. And we're in really good shape with the funding to do those things, and even feel like that we have some flexibility to look at some additional things. We actually looked a little bit at one of the thermometers that they're thermal. When you walk up to the door, it automatically takes your temperature. But with every decision we make, we have to kind of consult with public health. And so we can't have one kid at a time lined up out the door and everybody on top of each other. So in this situation, everything you have to question yourself more than once. You know, we always said ask yourself 3 times, and if you get the same answer, but now it's like 5 times. So we have to question ourselves to make sure that we're thinking along the right way. We bought some plexiglass dividers for a couple of our offices and a couple of our classrooms. For instance, our speech teacher. If our speech teacher is to provide therapy for students from day 1, there has to be a plexiglass in there. So there's lots of guidelines, but we are very fortunate that we have these funds, and we've been told that there might be a second wave of funds, particularly to help us meet those guidelines that are now in place and will be in place when school starts. Any questions about our SEEK formula, where we are now? Mr. Banfield, I don't think we have volume, according to Jennifer. Anyone have any questions about the funding? I know we were very concerned about the funding, but when we looked at what funds are available for us to recoup a lot of those costs, we feel really good about it.
Each fund, is it different how you can spend it?
Yes, it is. And that's why FEMA is really important to us, because it allows us to do things that we can't do with those other funds. However, I will tell you that there is a 13% match for FEMA. So of course we want to get the most from our dollars. So we will take the most expensive things that we can, that are allowable under those categories, before we ever touch anything else. Now, and Will asked me earlier, obviously we bought lots of technology, and I don't want to fail to tell you that we are going to be one-on-one with devices. We are, if we get them, we're very close right now, but what we have now is a little bit of a mixture. We have some iPads, because our younger kids really like those better, could manipulate those better. We have some tablets, we have Chromebooks. So what our goal is to have enough Chromebooks for everybody to be one-on-one, because they are a little more durable when they have to be home for virtual learning. And they're a little easier for us to train the kids on how to use. And if we're all doing the same thing, it makes it a little easy for our teachers as well. So those are some things we've done. We're also purchasing Wi-Fi for our school buses. We'll talk a little bit later about the parent surveys, but for our kids who live maybe in close proximity and don't have internet access, if we have Wi-Fi on our buses, we can park them in that area, and 50 devices can be hooked from that. So we are purchasing that Wi-Fi. We're also looking through this funding to be able to update our Wi-Fi so that it will be more efficient, since there's a possibility that we'll have 600 kids at the same time running through our system. So those are some things that we've looked at and the funding is available for, and we're real excited to be able to upgrade things that we needed to upgrade, but also upgrade them so that we can use them for not only a disaster, but for regular classroom instruction as well. So we're really excited about all those opportunities. Any additional questions about where we are with funding and how our funding looks? Okay,
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Okay. Discuss the 2020-2021 reentry.
okay. I might have to take my coat off for this one. Inside of your desk, you have a packet. I didn't want to overwhelm you, and I will tell you that I promise you that we won't go through all of those, but I want to talk to you about where we are in our process here with reentry, and I've been sending you the emails that we've been getting, and as you know, just the last few that you've gotten, they've changed very frequently. So the reentry for Barberville, the guidance that we've had for our school district includes guidance from KDE. In your packet, the first thing you have is the Education Continuation Task Force PowerPoint. And what that PowerPoint does is it talks to you about what public health says that is best practice for restarting the school year. It outlines the tools that we need, which I think is one of the most important factors that I've learned as the superintendent that has to be involved in our decision making. One, social distancing, cloth face masks, screening and temperature checks, hand and surface hygiene, and contact tracing. Those are all things that as a district, we have to look at regardless of the model we choose for reentry. For instance, when a decision is made, and as we make decisions, you have to remember that if you have a space where you cannot get an entire class 6 feet apart, they could wear a mask all day long. But we all know that that's not going to happen for elementary kids and or high school kids. That's not practical. So that is a decision that KDE says we can make as a school district. But what's going to happen is instruction, in my opinion, is going to be impacted because the teacher's going to have to police who's got their mask on all day instead of teaching. So if you ride a school bus, you can. Public Health has worked with the Kentucky Department of Education and superintendents to try to see if we couldn't meet in the middle somewhere in order for us to get kids back to school. So what's happening there is they've now said, okay, because you're on the bus for a limited amount of time, we think that it would be okay if this is met. So here's what has to be met. Before a child gets on a bus, someone other than the bus driver who cannot leave his seat has to take the temperature of that child. That child must have a mask on. That child must use hand sanitizer if they get into the door. They must use it going in, they must use it going out. If they are all living in one household, they need to sit together so that they're not around other people. So we can bus more students than we originally thought because it's a shorter period of time and those precautions are met. But in the classroom, if you are going to make kids use masks all day, you can have more kids. But they have to keep them on all day long, and it becomes a very hard issue for teachers, and it's a very challenging issue for teachers. And I feel like that our survey results might not be as good if we told parents that their kids had to sit in a mask for 7 hours all day. So, you know, those are things that this tells us. It tells us what public health wants us to do with social distancing, why we need the cloth face coverings, why it's important, why as a school district we need to screen for temperatures, and what we need to do to ensure that our kids are safe and healthy. So the guidance comes from KDE Special Task Force, as well as the governor's office and the commissioner of education's office. And they all work very well together and very well with superintendents and outside educational agencies to try to be on the same page and to help each other when it comes to guidelines. In this packet, you also have considerations for reopening schools, and there's different design strategies that you can use. So as you split through there, there's one strategy, basically it talks about a rotation for groups of students and groups of teachers and days and weeks. As you look through there, you will see all the different options that you can have. You can do all virtual. You can do a rotation. It's very flexible, but you have to do what is doable within your school district. So after talking to teachers, and we'll go over that in just a few minutes, and parents and other school districts, the most popular model for Barberville to be able to pull it off with our class sizes, because principals and I have been in a room, we've been measuring how many students can be in the room at one time. We've looked at issues that's been pointed out to us by public health about tracing and what that requires. It's not as simple as saying, okay, everybody can come as long as you're 6 feet apart. They have to stay together, and you have to know who's together on every single day. And if you change, our question as superintendents is, why can't we use our biggest spots like our cafeteria? And they said, we're not telling you can't, but we're telling you within that you have to follow guidelines. Guidelines are 6 feet apart or mask. It has to be wiped completely down when the groups change, and you have to have a seating chart, and they have to sit in the same spot every time, so that if there is an outbreak and someone gets it, we know exactly who is in close proximity. So there's a lot more to it than just showing up to school. And that I will say that these groups have been fabulous to work with, but I sent you a lot of this information, but I wanted you to have it. And I want our public to know that we're following the guidelines given to us by KDE, Public Health, and CDC to do the very best that we can to provide that rigorous curriculum that our teachers are very good at delivering in a regular school setting. So we'll get back to that in just a moment. The second document you have in that packet is the COVID-19 considerations for reopening. There's a lot of the very same information in here. It's just a little more descriptive in some cases. So I've also included that in your packet, as well as the information from the CDC. The CDC has a pamphlet that is interim guidance for administrators for K-12 schools and child care programs. So it has things in there like a school decision tree, which is your next sheet that you have, that looks a little bit like this. So it takes you through the what ifs. What you should consider if things are going on in your district. And I will tell you now that we have already been told that our plan not only has to be a plan about re-entering until things get better, but it also has to include what happens if we have to shut down immediately, what happens if we tell you that you have to shut down for 2 weeks, and what if you have to shut down long term. So the planning that the school district is having to do is very comprehensive. And there are lots of pieces and parts to it. So what I want to do today as we get through this, I want us to talk about what you think are the best options and your suggestions and ideas, and what you as a board would direct us as the best option at this point in time. As I said, things may change, but that's where we are with this now. But before we decide about re-entry, we weren't required by KDE to survey, but we felt like we had talked to our teachers through Zoom meetings, not particularly about re-entry, but about gap analysis through the KDE modules. They did some work where we looked at, we know kids are going to have learning gaps when they come next year. They were out of school for a long time. And in an environment that wasn't one that we had planned for. So there's going to be gaps and loss of learning. So what our teachers have been talking about is, okay, we've got to analyze those gaps the minute they come back, because KDE says you have to do that. Then we've got to look at the curriculum for the grade level they're in, and we've got to say what is critical, because we can't do both. So we work on the gap, and we work on the critical curriculum for that year. So our teachers have been doing that. But in addition to that, I've included in your packet our parent surveys. And you have data that looks like this, but you also have this sheet, because you can't always see the questions on the actual results sheet. So the entire questions I placed behind there for you. And I will tell you that we had 412 students represented in this survey. And that is very good for us as our district, because we had people on the phones calling, posting, sending messages, and doing all kinds of things in order to see. A lot of districts were very fearful that their kids were not going to return to school. And we wanted to make sure to gauge how our community felt and let them guide us in our reentry process. So what you will see, I'm just going to point out a couple things. First of all, the responses are very varied. And when you see the percentages here at grade level, it's going to be impacted a little bit, because if I have 3 children, it's going to pick up the grade level of that first child and not the others. So we actually had more participation per grade level than this, and this looks good to me, considering the surveys we usually get back. But if you flip that page, we asked our parents to look at what they preferred as a best learning option to meet the needs of their child. And they said 53.8 wanted them in person, following CDC and state guidelines for health and safety. But 30% also preferred a blended option that allows the rotation of online and in-person courses. So we had over 80% of those surveyed that want to come back to school, and they're okay with the blended method of doing so. The next option was, we wanted to know, if we do this rotation or if we do all virtual, whatever the decision is, how's your internet? And I'm going to be real honest with you. On the second question, we don't have anybody that says they have no internet. I know we have a couple kids whose families don't have internet, but they didn't answer this because they don't have internet. So we kept that in mind too when we were doing surveys. But when you look at our numbers of responses, you can see that we have 87.9% of our families that says they have reliable access to internet in their home, and that's pretty good. And we have 10.6 that says they have it, but it's not reliable. So with those COVID funds, we can also purchase, and I didn't tell you this, hotspots or Wi-Fi boxes that we can take to their house and they can use. So that's something we're also doing, is purchasing several of those so that we have hotspots for those families that are having some problems. So that's something that we've looked at as well. The next question talks about what type of devices they have in their house. And here's one that we worried about a lot. And we asked them if they had enough devices in their house for all their children to work at the same time. But of the people that answered the survey, 84% of them said yes, they do. But we have 13 that says no, we have devices, but we don't have enough for every child. So that's why we're going to issue Chromebooks to our students, so that there will be enough devices there to be able to do that. The next chart, do you feel comfortable with your child participating in digital learning during this time? In the event that school is not in session for an extended period of time. And we had 44% that said yes, they felt okay with that, and another 43% that said yes with additional support. So we got 80% of our parents who feel comfortable with that. We asked questions about last year's NTI experience, because although we know it's not going to be the same this year, we wanted to know how our parents felt about what we did. So you will see some information there. And again, I provided you with the questions because the full questions, because you can't see some of the options. What difficulties did your family face during the online instruction last spring? Not enough devices was at 28%. A lack of understanding the actual assignment was at 40%. So we know that we have to do some work there, and I think with a couple of the options, it'll take care of itself. And the last one, we asked students, parents, do you plan to send your kids back to Barberville for 2020? And 98.2% of our parents said yes, indeed they do. So we based a lot of our thoughts on reentry based on those parent surveys, but we also did a staff survey. And we wanted to gauge how our staff felt about coming back and what their greatest concerns would be, so that we could also provide opportunities for them to feel better about the experience. So that is the next one. We asked them how they felt about their skills with Google Classroom. Did they need extra assistance? Were they masters at it? How are you with video and uploading? How are you with Zoom? Lots of questions. We also asked them, what are your greatest concerns for your students? Because we wanted to make sure that we had addressed their concerns already in our survey. And if not, we wanted to address those additionally with parents. So we have some really good feedback here. The biggest barriers for our teachers was the worry that their kids didn't have the devices that they needed. So the parent survey helps us feel a little bit better about that, because as you saw, over 87% actually have those devices. So the teachers were very concerned about that. That was their number one concern. And you can look at the rest of these and see, as we talk about reentry, that we are considering all of that information that's been given to us by our staff and our families. Do you have any questions at this point? Okay, I'm not going to take much longer, I promise, but I want to show you what our plans are with your guidance. This is a draft. It's just started, and it's only started so that we can outline a communication plan for our families. It's very important that whatever choices and decisions are made, that we communicate very early to our families, because daycare is an issue. Who's going to take care of those kids? Internet's an issue, devices are an issue. There's lots of things that we feel like we need to give them as early as possible, simply because there's a lot of planning to be done in that process. Trying to get to the next slide, and I can't.
Click on the screen. There you go.
Okay, what you have in your packet is a draft. We took the guidance from KDE, CDC, and Public Health, and the information that we have on healthy at work and returning to school, and we started a format, that would have facts about COVID that we could share and have their guiding principles of responding to COVID. The daily health checks that we're required to do, we put pieces in that we know we're required to have that may change. The next page that you see is a timetable that may change depending on what you decide to do with the school calendar, but we wanted them to have an overall calendar to visualize in front of them, our families, as we communicate with them. Then we have to be extremely specific on what we're going to do with our campus and how we're going to operate. So we have a sheet called Campus Operational Norms that talks about what has to happen with social distancing, face masks, health checks, what we're doing about our large areas to make parents feel comfortable and us be assured that we have a plan for all possibilities that happen. Our cleaning and disinfecting, we have to outline what has to happen in the classroom, when it has to happen, what has to happen in the bathroom after students visit the bathroom, has to be sprayed down every time. So there's lots of things that we know we have to do. So we just started this draft to lead us into the next part, which is the academic and course delivery that you see there on the next page. And then the continuation of the planning that we have to provide according to KDE, and what do we do with the short-term closure, long-term closure, and those kinds of things. So this is a draft, and that's what we hope to be able to give our community so they can understand where we are, and also our staff so we can understand the processes. The model that we would like you to consider for opening the school is a blended model. What this model does is it allows you to bring in the number of students, and I will use the word half but in some cases it won't be. Half of your class on Monday, Wednesday, and every other Friday for in-seat instruction, following CDC guidelines and public health guidelines. The other class, part of that class, is at home with their Chromebooks doing live time streaming, just like we're doing now, as the teacher's teaching the content. The teacher will pull up a Zoom so that the kids that are at home can participate in the course conversations, just like they were in the seat. So that's why we've had to look at all of our technology capabilities and what we need to upgrade. So what that means is, as a parent, I can have a calendar well before school starts that says Monday, Wednesday, every other Friday, here's my calendar for the entire school year, with the understanding that if the restrictions are ever released, that we would go back to a normal setting. And if they're not released and something changes, of course, we would have to change. But that would allow teachers to do real-time teaching. Now, is it going to be perfect? No, it isn't. It's going to be a real problem in the high school, because one of the first guidelines is kids can't mix. When you come in with a group of 12, you stay with that group of 12 all day, because that limits your exposure to other people. So if I come in as a junior class and my first class is AP English, okay, I have to stay with those 12 kids all day. The teachers can rotate, they wear their mask, but they can rotate, so that we have to work out a plan for those kids to get instruction. Now here at Barberville, we're a little bit, sometimes we call it less fortunate, but it's kind of fortunate for this, that we basically have two different groups that we're dealing with, so that most of the kids for all of their core classes are grouped together all day. It's the elective courses that need the planning work that we've got to do to be able to figure out how we're going to provide those opportunities. One of the things we talked about is just having the teachers Zoom. And if I'm in a classroom of 12 and I've had my AP English, I've had my chemistry or whatever, then those special teachers are on Zoom with me. When if I have choir, Mr. Chafin is on Zoom and I'm sitting in there with those 12, but let's say Eddie had a business course, then his teacher's on his computer. So the capability for that elective teacher to stream in, and those 12 kids have different electives at the same time, is what we're looking at. Now, what we want to happen, if we look at, as we look deeper, is we really want to have more discussions with our teachers. They're the experts on how kids learn and how kids are going to handle this and what kids need to be grouped together. And if we look at a calendar that will allow us to have some days up front with teachers before kids come, we know that will allow us to have the very best plan of instruction for our kids. So right now we have a start. We have surveys that tell us that our kids want to come back. We have surveys that tell us that they're comfortable with blended learning, where they're home part of the time with virtual. The biggest part of our teachers' worries was, do our kids have enough devices? And we see that we are going to have some of those issues, but we are planning as a district with our relief funds to take care of that. So we feel like that, that's a start. Do we have all the answers? Absolutely not. Will it change tomorrow? Absolutely, yes, it will. That's what has been very frustrating to us, is we're used to black and white, and we've had no basic black and white, right or left. And again, I want to make sure as a board that you understand that we have options. We have options. We're not being told what to do. We're being told to follow public health CDC guidelines. But we still, as a district, have an opportunity to do things differently than what other school districts may do that. That's why we wanted to survey, to ask how our parents and staff felt about it. The biggest thing for us is going to be communicating that the virtual learning is real time. because we get to calculate virtual learning as attendance, just as we do in being in a seat for our funding formula. But we have to have evidence that they have participated in virtual learning. So we have to have a tracking system. So I will say, not to offend any of our students who might be listening, that I think some of them may slept into like noon and did their work on Friday for the whole week. And that is not the way this process works. This is a come to school at 8 o'clock, whether you're in a seat on site or where you're at a computer somewhere, and follow your teacher, and the lessons and the expectations for you to do the work are the same as they would be in the days you're in that classroom. So that's going to be different, making sure that our community understands that this is extended remote learning. It is not NTI. As a district, we still have the opportunity for NTI days, but we have an opportunity for 10. And we're being told that it is highly unlikely that we would be able to add to those. And particularly, that's why they're having us do this reentry plan and tell them what we're going to do virtually should we have to do a complete closure. So that's where we are with reentry. That the consensus is a blended program. The hard thing for us is that we're small and we've always had a lot of involvement. There's going to be some plain no's this time. The no is going to be, if you don't wear a mask, you don't get on the school bus, because we can't transport you in that school bus unless you follow the guidelines. So no, you wear the mask or you don't get on the bus. The second thing is going to be that you have to follow the guidelines within the building. If you're issued a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'll tell you what a nightmare this is, we've already started looking at it. If you've got 3 kids, they all need to come on the same day. So we're having to go grade level by grade level, pull families so that we can see how many do we have in 3rd grade today. Because, you know, we've got 14 over here, we only need 13. So we've already started that process. So the first question a parent asked me was, if mine's scheduled to be in a seat Monday and Wednesday, and they're sick on Monday, they can come on Thursday, can't they? No. The reason they can is we have a tracing issue, okay? We've got and a limited seating issue. So you're responsible for your day, because we can't police all week who didn't come on Monday because it's coming on Thursday. And if there's more that can be in that classroom, then we're hurting. So, you know, those are things that I know are not going to be comfortable because we do allow choices of student groupings in our elementary, and that's not going to be possible this year because of the way we have to organize the school day and the social distancing and the support services that have to happen for our kids that have IEPs and need modifications and accommodations. So there are some of those things that are going to happen, but I feel very good that our staff is on top of the guidelines, and that we have ordered the necessary equipment and everything that we can do to enhance the safety of our students and our families. There's going to be a difference in opening those car doors every day. We have to take a temperature before they get out of the car. You know, we can't transfer from one car to the other with our hands or gloves and buckle those seat belts. There's safe, you know, there's lots of things that we have to consider that normally you wouldn't think about. So it's going to be new, it's going to be different. We need to be flexible, and it is going to change. So what I would like to ask you is your feelings about the blended model, pros and cons, and what are your thoughts on where we are in this process?
I have 2 questions. Y'all know I would.
No, I'm glad you do.
Question number 1, do we have enough staff to keep the sanitary and all of those issues covered within the building, keeping the cleaning done, like you said, in the restrooms and
Okay, that's a great question. I will tell you this, that under those funding options that we have, if we need additional people and it is posted as temporary, those funds will pay for it. Okay, so we are thinking that we are going to have monitors on the bus. However, we do have some employees who won't get to do as much of the jobs they're doing now during the school day that we might also be able to use in that capacity. So we are looking at that because every time a student goes to the restroom has to be disinfected. That's why we bought the foggers. They dry very quickly. I mean, we're gonna have to go back to the old-fashioned way of scheduling restroom breaks because we can only have so many kids in the hallway at one time. We can only have so many kids in the bathroom, and then we have to clean after they all leave. So nobody can go for 5 minutes until it, has time to work. So logistically, honestly, this group has been working on this every day and, trying to play out all the scenarios. And just like when we tried to start up this board meeting, something is going to happen. We're not going to have it all figured out. But as a school district, if we do everything in our means to keep our kids safe by following the guidelines and doing what we need to do for the health and safety of our students and our staff, then I think that we're going to be in good shape. But that's a very good question. And if it's temporary, if we need additional staff and it's temporary, then we can also pay for that out of those funds because it's something that we need. So that took a lot of pressure off. Employees that you already have cannot be paid out of those funds unless they're working outside of their regular assigned work hours. So we could even take someone, let's say an instructional assistant that would like to make more money, who doesn't report to work until 7:30 or 7:45, and they might want the additional monies to ride that bus to do that. So we could pay that part of their salary as a temporary salary because it's in addition to outside of their regular workday.
Second question.
Yes.
The strategy that you're talking about doing students on Monday, Wednesday, and then rotating every other Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just basing it on my experience with a granddaughter and I have taught the smaller children, because
Yes.
it's been a while. I wondered if maybe doing Monday through Wednesday, giving those children those days, consecutive days, and then rotating it to where 1 week they get 3 days in class and the other group gets 2, then the next group gets,
Yeah,
do
absolutely.
3, 2,
Yes.
2, 3.
I will
So
tell
they
you
get that
that's.
consecutive
Yeah,
days.
we might need to poll our parents about that. That might be a good polling point because I've heard that. And then I've also heard we want our kids to be more of a routine of coming to school. They don't do well at home. So we want them to have a day in school, then here because they just heard what the teacher said, then back for the teacher to get onto them the next day. That was kind of what we heard. Then we also heard, well, why can't we do on-site Monday through Friday? And then the next week be virtual all day, all week. And parents said, we don't want our kids to be at home all week. We don't want that. Our kids don't do well. So I think maybe I can push out that question to our parents.
Yeah.
And that's the reason we came up with the Monday, Wednesday, every other Friday, because it gave an opportunity to have kids with a teacher for some initial instruction and some follow-up after they come back from home. We thought we could keep them on task a little more, I guess, is what I should say, that the teacher could be more on target with getting them back on track, but more so than being gone 2 days at a time. But that's I think we can ask our parents that, because daycare worries me about what's going to work best for kids that have to go to daycare. And I will expand a little bit and tell you that Mr. Carey and I are going to start next week. Well, he's going to be on vacation, so it's going to be Mr. Middleton and I next week. We're going to visit our local daycares and we're going to ask about what their flexibility is going to be. Because normally if you don't go there full time, they don't take you on a couple days a week. And we're going to ask them to reconsider that. We're also going to ask them if they need devices or student desk, or if there's anything that we could provide to them. So on those virtual days that those kids have what they need. I mean, do you need a whiteboard, and try to encourage them to be involved in that with those kids. So we're going to do those visits. And hopefully we know their numbers are restricted too, and they may not be able to help us, but we have tried to think through a lot of that, what ifs, what could happen. And, we have students who don't have the help at home, who will be home without the help. So another thing we're going to do is a dedicated phone number for students and parents to have. If it's your virtual day and you're home, and you're having some kind of problem getting online or whatever, you call that number. We're not gonna let you sit there for 7 hours and not get it to work. We're gonna come fix it.
Okay,
We're gonna fix it.
That brings about question number 3. I said I had 2
Okay.
questions. I actually have 3. But my point about them going the 3 consecutive days and then 2 and rotating it is, especially with these different routines they're gonna have to go through, there's gonna be a learning curve there
Oh,
for the
yes.
students.
You're
And I
absolutely
thought
right.
those 3 days might.
There's gonna be a
helpful.
big learning curve. When we first come back, it's gonna be about process. Process of, if you're at home on your virtual day, here's what's gonna happen. Here's how you use this, teaching them how to do audio. Like, we don't want you to just chat or say nothing. We wanna hear from you. When you're on there, I wanna hear you. I want you to participate in the class. So we're gonna have to teach them those things. We're gonna have to teach them about social distancing. And I got tickled because one of the teachers said, well, goodness gracious, if I just have 12 kids and I have to line them up as if we go down the hallway 6 feet apart, how am I gonna watch those babies? They're gonna be like on the other end of the building. We said, okay, let's go back and think about this. Put a mask on if you have to walk out to the bus. So if they have the mask on, then they can be closer. Do we want them to be that way all day? No. But so there's lots of things, not only for the kids and parents, but for us as staff that we're really gonna have to work through. But yes, we can very easily, very quickly poll our parents and give them like those options that we talked about and any more that we might could come up with, and just let them take a look at it and see how it ends up. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, what if a student misses a day of instruction, whether it be in class or online?
It will be handled exactly the same way as our attendance policy says.
Will the lessons be stored online where they can use it as a resource? Is there gonna be a?
Our goal is to record each of those lessons, but on a normal day in a normal school year, we don't have a rewind button.
That's right.
So, we're gonna do the very best we can to do that and provide that to our kids, but it's going to be, if they do it at home and have access to it, that's good, but there's no way they can come back in here and spend all day, a day they're supposed to be doing new instruction, watching the video from the old instruction. So we gotta work that out too. And we gotta make sure that parents know that it's exactly the same. If you miss a day, we don't get to calculate your attendance. We don't count your attendance, and you have to have a doctor's excuse in order to be able to make your work up. So that policy will be exactly like it is now. It will not change.
What if they're too sick to come to school, but they can tune in and do it from home?
Then that's good. That's fabulous. And that's part of this option for virtual. We're gonna have some kids that are at risk who would rather do full virtual, and we're gonna allow that to happen because we should. So if there's a kid whose doctor recommends that they not be even in social distance in an environment in the school, then they have the option to do full virtual
So we will be recording have live streaming of the
classroom.
The live classroom.
Yes. Now, is it gonna work every time? Probably not. We're probably gonna have some glitches when we first get started because everybody's doing it at the same time. Every teacher's got it on, it's on all day. And so Jeff, our technology person, and Mike Deaton are taking care of us on our upgrades. The problem is it's very hard to get anything in, and it's very hard to get anything done because everybody has the same great ideas. Let's upgrade and let's buy now while we can.
Yeah.
So it's taking a lot of time, a lot longer to get the things that we need. So that's another issue that we're dealing with. But those are some really good questions. Does anybody have any more?
Well, I'm sure you thought it out, but for the folks that may be listening or watching, when the kids aren't here, how are we handling feeding them and that breakfast and lunch?
Okay, actually what we're waiting on, we still don't have a clear answer to that. And I kind of laughed, Mr. Carey and I, we joined some webinars and they usually say we're working on it, and we all kind of send thumbs up to each other, but they're working on it. And what we've been told right now, I'm hoping it's gonna change a little bit. We've been told that food has to be served in a box. And we can't cook and prepare the food like we did all summer. And that still concerns me, but we will do whatever we are told to do. And we still don't know what our guidelines are going to be to provide that, but I know without a doubt that we can at least provide pickup stations. and maybe choose within our city district. I think we should do that regardless. And our bus drivers, depending on what happens with our students being permitted to go to another facilities like Kentucky Tech, may have more flexibility. If that can't happen, and right now I don't really know how it can, they can't use the machinery and things like that without a lot of disinfectant going on and extra staff, as Benita pointed out. But we're still waiting on exactly what to do, but providing food and meals for our kids was our priority. And we did that the whole entire time, and we'll continue to do that. We'll make it work.
How can we do Kentucky Tech if we're trying to keep 12 kids together?
That's right. Well, you can't really. That's going to be something. Now, their teachers could rotate in, and their teachers could do the virtual, the live stream if they chose to do so. But that would totally be up to Ralph and what they do at Kentucky Tech. So I'm not real sure how that's going to work out yet. I'm really a little concerned about that. We're even concerned about the dual credit for kids that go to college campuses. Tim, that's probably one of the questions that's on your chart. I'm really concerned about. I know what we do in our facilities when kids are here to follow guidelines. I don't know what they do in other facilities that our kids may go to during the day. I'm really concerned about the responsibility of that. So we have talked about that. I can protect our kids to the very best of our ability here by following the guidelines, but I don't know if they go to another college or university, or they go, co-op or whatever it may be. I don't know the ins and outs of what decisions we need to make that would be best for our district.
We can require full credit to be online.
Absolutely. We can require that, but the colleges, in some cases, now a lot of it is online, but in some cases, it's their choice where they operate online or not.
This is a different situation.
Yeah, it's very different right now. If I were at the college or university level, I would have the online option for every course that I have. Anything else? So are we okay with us continuing to look at this blended model and this doing an additional polling of our parents to see the configuration of those days? Now, I can tell you that we might be split, 25, 25, 25, and 25 on it, but I think it's a really good suggestion. I think we should do it and see if we have those that really have if we have a majority on that. Because, we're going to be here doing the work. So whatever works best with our parents and their planning for their kids on those virtual days will be fine with us.
I think it's very realistic that at some point in the fall, we'll be going online. So why not prepare for it? It could be one day, it could be 2 months, but prepare now for that.
Yes, we're very fortunate. We have a very flexible staff. You've heard us say this before. I was very proud of them through the NTI process, because that was an emergency process. I mean, that we didn't plan for long-term, weeks and weeks of at-home instruction, but our folks got in there and they did a good job, and they learned more about technology than they knew. Because some of them were not masters at it. They were at the novice level, and they've gotten so much better. And then it's helped us inform what we need to do for professional development and learning for our teachers. And in the survey, that's why we asked them, what do we need to do to help you? What do you need? Do you need more assistance in learning how to do this program or that program? Is it going to be your content you're worried about? What do you need us to help you with? So a very good staff, very flexible and willing to do whatever they need to do for the students. Appreciate that. The last thing we have is the Healthy at Work guidance for youth sports and athletic activities. I sent you the link to the discussion with the commissioner of the KHSAA, Julian Tackett. And I think, Tim, help me if I'm wrong, that was with Kevin Brown and the commissioner, that one. We have so many, it's really hard to differentiate, can't talk. But I wanted to share these guidelines with you, and very quickly, June 15th has passed, but with June 15th passing, as you look through this packet, the only thing applicable to Barberville at this point in time is, the golf, because our tennis is an off season. The only thing that, in that first category, low touch outdoor use sports that we offer that we needed to even look at is the golf. The low touch indoor is the archery for us. So those were the two things that are addressed after June 15th. You can gather in groups of 10 or less for physical fitness trainings with one adult who wears a mask, and you have no equipment, basically. Is that very close, Tim?
Close. Mhm.
It's very close. So the high touch, they consider high touch. The high touch that we have is basketball, cheerleading, and dance. And those were released to do exercising and skills training. And if you watch the video, one of the huge recommendations was that it be outdoors. Okay, that it be outdoors, that it not be indoors because of the no use of equipment, first of all. Not a basketball can be thrown out, not a football pad can be put on, not a football helmet can be put on. You cannot use equipment of any kind, a baseball, a basketball, or anything that would be passed from one person to the other, no equipment. So there are your guidelines for that. One adult coach, it explains that completely. The high touch that was on that second page, soccer, is one of those things that we have that was there for the soccer. Now, June 29th, let's talk June 29th. June 29th, if all goes well, this is what's to happen. But I will tell you, I don't know how many of you watched the governor's address earlier today, but there was a question about us going to the 50 people in one room, and he was very hesitant about answering it. So I'm just saying that it's a possibility that this too shall change, depending on where we are with the number of cases that we have. It's the first time that I noticed a hesitation in his voice about moving on to that next stage. So I may have just read that in, I was running in and out the door or not, but at this point in time, on June 29th, it talks about resuming competitions with up to 50 spectators, following the guidance that's also in your package for those of 50 for low touch outdoor sports and athletic activities, low touch and outdoors. The low touch indoor activities with youth sports is addressed next. And the high touch indoor youth sports is the last column. It says that we can resume team and group practices without competition. Youth participants should be subdivided into small groups of 10 or fewer with no more than one adult coach while following the guidelines. All team and group practices are limited to 50 youth in accordance with the social distancing and groups of 10. It goes on to say that our high touch activities at the end is practice without competition. Limited to low touch, medium sharing activities unless necessary. To protect, like there are some situations that you might have to have a student assisting another student, and they might have a mask on when they're doing that. But there are requirements for groups of 10 and there are requirements of groups of 50. Now, currently, we have not opened up our facilities. The use of the gymnasium would fall under the same guidelines. Tim, help me if I'm right here. That would allow the no equipment, social distancing aspects to be there, and it wouldn't be as normal as it has been in the past. It won't look the same as of June 29th. But you could decide as a school district if you want to open your facility, and our facility that we would have would be our gymnasium. Within those guidelines, I will say that, your coaches would have to meet all guidelines. That would have to be monitored. The disinfectant process in and out of the building would have to be monitored. We have no custodians here through the summer, after, 2:30 during the day, 3 o'clock maybe during the day. So there are lots of things to consider. I would love for our kids to be together. I would love for them to have the opportunity to do the things they love to do. But I think the decision that we have to make is based on what is appropriate and follows the guidelines from CDC and public health. At this point, we do not have a facility open. Our weight room is way too small to have conditioning in and be able to do the social distancing. There's not enough ventilation up there. So our teams though do a lot of outdoor running and things like that. But again, they have to maintain at this point social distancing and groups of 10 or less in order to do that. So comments, questions?
I wonder with, regardless of when things open and decisions that are made with that, our insurance liability. with
Okay.
this.
One thing I have indicated to the co-op that you're gonna head up next year is that each of the districts, as you need to call now, then as you bid out insurance again, see if there's 2 types of coverage, one for liability. Somebody comes here and says, oh, you didn't follow the CDC guidelines, so I want to sue you because I got it when I touched the desk. The other one is workers' comp.
Okay.
You get an employee that comes to work, oh, I contacted or contracted this bug here at work, so I want to file a comp claim. So what I have recommended to all the districts is to immediately call your workers' comp and your liability carrier, see if you have coverage for these claims. Because
Find out where you're staying.
I can see it coming.
I can too.
Yeah.
And I will say that there are some things that are near impossible to do, but the attempt to do the near impossible is what's important. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tim? Showing that we have done everything that we could possibly do and followed every guideline that we could possibly follow is what is extremely important at times like this. And there's still a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of questions. We did get, and I think I may have mentioned to several of you, a statement, and to be really honest, I'm going to say this, I don't remember at this point in time where it came from, but that the insurance companies were saying, we will not, it wasn't support you, but it's basically, we won't pay out claims if you don't follow the guidelines.
The biggest concern there was, even though you had a quarantine order, shut the daycare down, the carriers were saying, you didn't have a case in your daycare, so we don't have to pay you.
Okay.
So the liability under those, what they were arguing was that unless you had at least one case that resulted in your closure, they weren't going to pay you because those businesses were looking for loss of income. So,
Well, it wasn't as bad as it sounded though for us as a district though.
Right.
I know they came back and clarified that on one of the superintendent's webcasts. And what's the term? I think you might have been the one that pointed it out, Tim. You or Wayne one talked about that it's always existed, maybe it was Wayne, it's always existed in insurance policies as long as you do make a reasonable attempt to follow guidelines. Wayne pointed out a couple things for us. I'll have to go back and look and I can send that to you all. But we have had issues about insurance and liability.
but you're lucky though, as a corporate board, you have governmental immunity from being sued. You as board members have official immunity in your capacity as a board member. The staff, as superintendent and your staff, you have official immunity. In Kentucky state law, if a claim was made, they would have to go after an individual in their individual capacity, but that's only if, law school 101, that's only if somebody failed to meet a mandatory duty. If the employee had a discretionary point, that is, they had options, then they have immunity. They have limited immunity. But if they have a mandatory duty and they fail to meet that duty, then that's where the individual, but the board could get out on immunity, and board members get out on official immunity. You guys could get out on official immunity. And if you had an individual, give you an example, bus wreck. Bus injures a child. Board gets out, superintendent gets out, the employees get out in their official capacity, but the individual bus driver would stay in.
Okay,
Then the question becomes, did he or she fail a mandatory duty, or were they exercising their discretion with a number of options?
okay. Good, that was a good lesson. And KEDC is what he is referring to. KEDC and Southeast South Central have been wonderful throughout this whole process. We've been communicating together regionally and statewide, and they've been really good. And I'm going to serve on the KEDC executive board next year. So I'm looking forward to that, Tim. Looking forward to working with you more. Any additional questions? Let's talk about June 29th.
Just for your FYI, and it may have ended up applying to other athletic groups, Fauci came out today and recommended no football.
Yes.
I saw that.
So I don't know, but that's just a food for thought.
I know, it's very difficult because kids love it. It's great for them. It's great for us parents. I miss going to a ball game so bad. And watching kids and participating in that. But I do think that we have a duty to follow the guidelines as close as we can and provide a safe environment for our kids. I will tell you that I know districts around us who have not opened their gym facilities and are revisiting this at the end of June. I don't know if we'd have to do that in a formal capacity, if that would take a board motion. I don't think it would. I think that if we wanted to wait to that date when they actually could get in and do more, which is June 29th, I believe, if I remember correctly, then we could have a conversation about it at that time and see what your thoughts and feelings are on that.
I don't think it'd be wise to open up that one myself. We're trying to limit contact exposure.
Yeah, I agree. I want my kids to be able to do things, but I also want them to be healthy. And when we have different groups of 10 kids coming in and out, we have to ensure that we have a mechanism to follow those guidelines and to clean and disinfect between every group that comes in. And to be real honest, late evening, we don't have that capacity. We don't have the capacity to do that in late evening. So, are you okay with the fact that, and Tim, help me here, could we not, we don't have to have an official board action on that?
No, the
That's something
only-
we can do.
The only need for the board to vote on that is if the board had voted earlier to close the gym.
Okay, and they did not.
Or if the board had a policy that the gym was to be closed.
Okay. So if that is okay with you, what we will do is, we can't do a conference call, but I'll call each of you individually and talk to you at the end of June when and look at the guidance that we have there, and you can tell me what your feelings are and what you would like to do. Instead of us having to come back together to do a board meeting, I think that we could do that. I could just kind of call you individually. It's something we discussed at this meeting, and as Tim said, we didn't have an order to do that, so I think that would be fine. And if you have an objection to that and would like to handle it differently, let Eddie know. Anybody have one of those? I'm gonna be glad that my part is over.
Okay, approve 2021 calendar. Karen?
We've already approved the 2021 calendar, so this is an amendment. I've already got it approved by KD, so this is an amendment to the 2021 calendar to change the calendar to starting school August 26th I'll go through this calendar again, still
Mr.
Labor Day.
Terry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think we need to start with the reasons that we have to look at the
Okay.
calendar again. So that kind of the public will know why we're looking at it again.
There is a law that states that you can start school after the first Monday after the August 26th and not be required to get all 175 instructional days. And it will allow you to go by instructional time instead of instructional days. So I've created a calendar that starts on August 26th, which is on a Wednesday. We still have Labor Day, still one full week of fall break, offer presidential election day, Thanksgiving breaks still the same, Christmas break still 2 weeks, Martin Luther King Day, and then still a week for spring break, and the last day of school will be still, usually when we get out, the Friday before Memorial Day, which is next May will be May 28th. So this calendar has 172 days in it. We will reach our instructional time, the 1,062 hours on day 162. So if something happens, we got 10 NTI days and those 10 extra days if it's a have to use.
I may just interject, one thing in our conversation that Mr. Carey and I have talked and participated in webinars. This year, as you remember, they gave us an option to go back and shorten our school year. They tell us if we don't make this choice up front, that we're not gonna have that option this year, simply because it's in statute, I guess, it's legislative. That's one of the things to consider. But then we also said, oh, we could finish early, but we don't want to cheat our kids out of instructional days. So our hope is that we can get in at least 172 instructional days, even with this abbreviated calendar. But if we should have a crisis, as we had at the end of last year, then we could end at the 162nd day in our calendar.
Those are kind of like bank days, I guess, that we've already put in.
And there's been some confusion with staff in the communities that this refers to the number of hours that students receive instruction. It doesn't relate to the number of days that the employees have to work. They still have to meet their contractual obligations.
Absolutely.
So teachers have to have foot on the ground or NTI or virtual learning, their minimum number of days. This relates to the number of hours for students.
Yes. And to add to that, I will say to you, one of the things I mentioned when we were talking about reentry, if we do this calendar, 172 days, the teachers have to work 185 days. What we will do is bring our teachers in before so that we can work through curriculum issues, technology issues, training issues, so that we're more prepared to hit the ground running when kids do start on the 26th. We wouldn't finish up, a lot of times we finish on the end after the year. This would give us an opportunity to plan up front. And I have Zoomed with the teachers that participated, several teachers, and I have already told them that regardless of the calendar, we will be working 185 days. And we plan, because we have our own individual classrooms, that should there be an issue that would not allow students to be here, but would allow us as staff to be here with social distancing, that we will also still work from our classrooms to do the live stream feed. We've already discussed those things.
So that's what the August 6th date would be, like on the reentry plan, where it says fall classes begin.
No, that was the old
That's the
calendar.
old-
We haven't
oh.
updated it because that was our
Oh, okay.
calendar. We'll change all that if we
Okay.
change the
That
calendar.
is the approved calendar. This
Gotcha.
will be the amended calendar.
Oh, okay. But you're saying like maybe a week or two before the
Yes.
26th, teachers will come in
Absolutely.
for
They-
PD and
they'll
all
owe
that.
us-
Yes.
To get the 185 contract days, they'll owe us 3 days. There's 182 showing on this.
Gotcha. Okay.
Did you give any
That-
consideration to do away with the fall break since we're starting so late. That only gives you 5 weeks before the fall break. And then, also going into the flu season, we kind of anticipate having to shut down at some point early.
I've had other calendars, but this is the one I chose to show you that had days scattered off all over. But this is the one that was more consistent because it had the 172 days in it. And if we took those days that we plan, I can't say, an example, like last year, it started in January. So I had a calendar made out that said, okay, I'm gonna take every Friday off. But if I do that, and we don't need it, I've lost bus money, lunch money for that day. But I can take the gamble with 172 days and say, maybe we just have to have one of those Fridays off. Something happens and we have to take just 2 days off.
I think
Instead
what
of
he's
having it
asking-
already in there. The fall break,
I think you communicated to me, I asked, we talked about that the parents, when we did the surveys before, were very adamant about the fall break, but we can poll them again. I think the only decision that we have to make and need to make, Brian, am I wrong? We can't poll them again? I agree with you. I don't
I'm
think.
wondering when this calendar has to.
What would
be.
happen is we would go those days and we would end up stopping 5 days earlier.
Well, and that, to what Eddie was saying about the flu season and those sorts of things, I know at colleges, universities across the state, just example, I know at Union, we're trying to end all face-to-face instruction the week before Thanksgiving break, because the kids will go back and you don't know where they've been, where they're
Well,
going.
I had the fall break shortened and maybe in another calendar, I took Monday and Tuesday off of Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But then we're supposed to have winter festival.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have to look at all of those things to try and figure out.
Yeah, the way we're looking now, you don't have one festival. That's not
Mhm.
very likely to happen.
If we take those 5 days, where does that put the end date? And then maybe we
Still
could do the Thursday and Friday. I don't think there'll be a
It's
DBS,
still-
but if
it's
there
still-
is, Thursday and Friday is when our kids will walk off.
It'll still be that last week of May.
So you're really not getting.
You're not gaining a
Well,
lot.
what you're gaining is kids in the classroom.
Continuous instruction.
You're gonna have, that's more days are gonna be in the classroom, because most likely, the time you get November sometime, first of December, flu season's gonna start,
Yeah.
and we'll be going to more of an online program. So this is, I would hate to see us take a fall break, and then the very next week have to shut down and go to online, and you would lose a whole week of, even though maybe on 3 days, you would lose that week of in classroom instruction. I mean, that's just
I think that's a very good point, and I think you could eliminate the break completely, or you could, because it's such a learned behavior, you could do Thursday and Friday, or this is a chance to change that.
I don't, if you think about Danville Festival, it's sure not a good idea to
It's
take
not.
off school, allow them to go to the festival.
It
if
is
that
not.
happens.
If we
because
can't even have a full class on
If you
Saturday.
don't have sickness before, then you don't have to
So
have.
do you want,
Oh, that's true.
do you want those days, where do you want those days put? If we took 3, where would you?
He wants you to take them off the end, so that you're,
You can
Or do
short-
you want to do the 3 and just have 175 days?
But the thing is, at any point in time, we may be closing school.
so we need to get as many days early as we possibly can.
That would make
That
175,
was
that would
my
make
point.
I don't think
175
people
days.
will be taking fall vacations either.
That would make 175 days unless we took them off. Then we're still at
What
172.
what he's suggesting is that you use those days as school days, go to the end of your calendar and take the
Take
last
them off.
days
So you
off.
still want to have 172 days,
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
or keep those 3 and have 175.
172 for this COVID year is what my.
Or you can
recommendation would
take,
be.
what you could do
I
is
see
what
what
you
you're
said
saying.
before, you could just eliminate fall break and then take the entire Thanksgiving break week off. They give you a full week. You come back.
I had a calendar made.
You could, I mean, I think those are good suggestions.
That would be,
And that gives us a
More
larger
time.
stretch of instructional time up front
So do you want me to
than
take,
on the end.
you want me to take Monday and Tuesday and put it on November 23rd and 24th? So
I'm just
that
saying,
is too.
Which that would be the full week of Thanksgiving break if you did that.
they use 4 weeks Thanksgiving, you take the other 3 days and bring the end of school back 3 days. And
We could, I mean, well, so.
We want to come to school every day that week, correct?
Every-
You all want to come to school
That-
every
that
day
may-
that week?
I don't know,
The week of fall break.
that was what I was asking.
If we have the Daniel Festival, they're gonna go, people are gonna go to it, so they're gonna miss school.
If they go, we don't want the school this week. I don't think you're gonna have, I don't think that's very likely to.
The chicken festival's been canceled, hasn't it? I saw that. It has been canceled.
So It's something we need
I
to.
think
decide
other
on.
school districts that week of, on fall break, it took Thursday and Friday. Still got Thursday and Friday off.
So that's an option. We take all 5 days and we add it back into the school calendar, or we take 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday that we add back into school calendar, take the Thursday, Friday off, and put those 2 days to give us the full Thanksgiving week. Well, is that
I
what?
could take two on the November 23rd and 24th, that's Monday and Tuesday. And then take the other one, take off the end of the year.
I mean, but you may want
And
to
we
do all
could have,
5. I
they
mean,
make
that's
that
up to
day
you
right
guys
there if we
completely.
needed it.
Right, you'd have 3 to play around with
Or
there.
we'd have one at the
One.
end.
You know, and I guess, you know, if it, you know, if the virus suddenly goes away and things get better and, you know, things change and you want to take off some time, then you can still take the days off.
You can amend the
You
calendar.
can, you know, it's,
Yes, you can.
If
Absolutely.
we get a vaccine,
yeah,
We could say.
then we can.
Back to
then we
normal.
can-
So I guess I'm going to ask the board, instead of this calendar that you got, change it to, we're going to be at school October 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Unless you want to do the whole week, that's up to you all.
And then take off November 23rd, 24th. And I could put closing day on the 28th. In school on the 27th, put closing day on the 28th.
So I guess the decision for the board is, do you want to do,
Or take the whole week.
do you want to add instructional time to those 5 days that we normally have set aside for fall break? Or the other choice is we could split it up, go 3 days and off 2 days. What are your feelings on that?
Well, if you're gonna be splitting the students, that would be only one group of children that would get instruction that week.
We
I
may
think that
change,
makes
we
more
could change
difficult,
that
too.
week. We could change that.
It's totally up to you
You
guys.
think
We have to
it's
work
gonna be-
our days regardless. so.
Yeah, I just don't think many people are gonna be traveling.
I just feel
don't
like
think
the
they'll be able to go to the festival.
Yeah.
And like you said, we're only 5 weeks into school at that point.
Yeah, we are only 5.
And like you said, if something were to change, if we know that, we can always come back and give fall break 2 days or a week or whatever. But I think I would recommend the full week. of
I think it's
instruction.
instructionally smarter. And I don't know about traveling. I do know that if people make reservations a year ahead, they may have made reservations, but travel is about halted really. So, if we tell them early enough, and now is early enough, they can make, changes to those reservations, if they choose to do so. So, I think that the instructional time up front is a very good point.
So take the whole week of fall break, make it instructional days. The week of Thanksgiving off. And in school on May 25th. Closing day, May 26th.
I think people would probably rather have that whole week for Thanksgiving too. with their families.
I think they would too, because if they're going to travel, that's when. they're
And
going to
so
travel.
what's happened with the change in the calendar is that, no, we don't have the old fashioned break because we're starting later, so we're doing more instructional time up front. But they will have a whole week together, the week of, Brian, when is the whole week of break for everyone?
The whole week of which break?
The
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving,
Thanksgiving
that'd
week
be,
starts on Monday,
that'd be the 23rd through the 27th.
okay, so we will have a week's worth of break, but we moved it to a later date, the week of Thanksgiving. It's actually allowed you to finish a little bit earlier as well.
That would put us finishing the first 9 weeks, trying to count here real quick. Right at the, around November 5th or 6th, for the first 9 weeks to be over.
Is that, someone want to make a motion for that calendar?
I'll make a motion that we amend the calendar for the start date to begin the 26th. That fall break as currently scheduled become instructional days. Or, I hope I'm saying all this right. And the week of Thanksgiving, which would be November 23rd through the 27th, that students, that we take that as our fall break, which would then shorten the close date to
25th,
May 25th,
close it date, May 26th.
and then closing day, May 26th.
So that will be 172 hours. Also, we are at the high school for the last 4 years. It's had a 395 minute school day. Where the elementary, we took out the high school break, which increased the instructional minutes. The elementary's always been 380 because they had the 15-minute recess. We're going to change that break into a health and wellness instructional time and add 15 minutes onto the elementary instructional time, which will make everybody 395 minutes for the day.
Okay, question out there. Are you gonna give the children a break while they're doing instructional time online?
It is the fitness equipment, all that out in the, yes.
That'll-
Oh, yes, yes,
online,
brain
that'll be
break,
okay.
absolutely.
They're gonna have to have.
Yes,
brain
they're all
breaks.
gonna have brain breaks, more than one.
Yeah, I mean, that's a
So's the
long time to
teacher.
stay in one
Well-
chair.
Yeah.
They'll be changing classes to 5 minutes in between. Just like regular school.
Okay, Jesse made a motion for the calendar and then Sandy a second. All those in favor, let me know, say aye. Aye. Okay. Discuss a bus purchase. Mr. Carey?
In your packet, you should have had a typed out sheet with some up at the top, so Thomas School Bus, type C was the first line on it. Couple pages.
Closer to the back, I believe.
And then you've got another sheet that I laid on your desk. You may have to have a magnifying glass to see it. Of some information about the funding for some of the school buses for this. So there was Mr. Crawford may know about this, a lawsuit against Volkswagen.
I hope you're gonna get some money back.
Absolutely, long story short.
So through that lawsuit, the state in the budget provided around $8.5 million to pay for half of the price of a new school bus to replace a school bus that was 2001 or older. We do have one school bus that's a 1999 that we bought used to begin with about 6-7 years ago.
Mr. Carey, is it my understanding that that money is not where it needs to be yet in order to move forward with a purchase?
No, we're just discussing it today.
Okay.
So I got on the the school bus purchasing website, just to give you a little bit of information. On this first page, a type C school bus is like the last bus that we bought, 3664, just a conventional regular school bus. I will say that all but one of my drivers would rather drive that bus than the other one. And the one that likes the other bus is the one that drives it all day long. So
So they like the last one the
they
best?
like the best one the best. It's a 72 passenger. The other bus, the 2018 is 78 passenger. The price of that bus is $93,625. Now that is on this current bid list that ends next week. My bus salesman called me the other day. He said to usually on that it goes up 0.5% to 2% increase each year. And just under that, you have all the options. We do have on the bus that we do have, we have the radio. We do have the DVR camera. We do have the event marker button. That is, if something happens on those cameras, you push a button. And when I take the hard drive out and put it in my computer, it will show me, so I don't have to go all through the video. It'll show me that spot, that whatever happened, and I don't have to watch the whole video. They've just come out with stop arm cameras, and then just regular cameras, and the dome cameras, basically the same thing. A perimeter camera shows all over the bus. Some cars have it now where I don't know how it does it, but it looks down on the bus. They had a bus that when we picked this last bus up at Wayne Supply, they had that camera in another bus that they were fixing. It's in the rear view mirror, and it's about that size, and you can see it. The different storage boxes, you get the options of a 60-inch or 100-inch. The big option, the big price is the air conditioner, which is $9,995. You can get dash air only in that type of a bus. The tinted windows, the Wi-Fi router I'm going to take out. I found out that it's easier, and my salesman told me this, just go to AT&T and buy one of theirs, plug it in a cigarette lighter, and go with it. And then the corrosion protection, all of those buses have that sprayed underneath them. If you get this, it's on everything, bumpers and everything outside. Which somebody 10 years from now, that's what you're fighting on all these buses, is corrosion up underneath them when they get 10 years, 10, 11 years.
Kind of like us.
The next page, the next page on the back of the page, the first page, I kind of divided this down. That's the wish list. At the bottom, you'll see the price. With all that, of course, the big option on that is the air conditioner at almost $10,000. And then the next page just is kind of a minimum that ended at $100,000.
And I will say that we do have the 2 new buses that both have air conditioning on them, and that our routes are not as lengthy as some routes might be. If teams were traveling, we would have the 2 buses that had the air conditioning, but that's $10,000 choice. But we do have the 2 new buses that are air conditioning and have that on there, if that should be an option that you would like to eliminate. Once the money is there.
The option on the last just has the dash air, which was $2,000, around $2,000. Minus the Wi-Fi router that I found out different. I did not add the perimeter camera on that last option either. So that's just an idea. There is a webinar next week to find out more about that money. See if we ordered it July, August, in that range, we would have it in spring after Christmas.
Any thoughts on that?
Have air conditioning.
I would-
And the money we
No, I'm not making
go.
our children wince, but
Would too.
I just like when they have air conditioning.
So are we saying that we're, tonight, that we're going, it's just informational?
Just
Just
informational.
Okay.
So next month, there should have more.
I'll be able to tell you more about
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Okay, the new bank depository, 2020, 2021. Bank depository. It says we currently have a commercial bank and,
They've done a great job.
it's, worked out well for us. We got any other thoughts on that or? Make a motion to renew the bank depository.
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Ms. Williams, second by Daniels. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Okay, approve property, fleet, general liability, educators, legal liability, and workers' compensation insurance policy renewals for 2020, 2021. Is you, Jennifer?
Yes, you had those, for that, and it increased not very much for us this year. We had a little bit of an increase based on, some run loss ratios from the lawsuit. We had, just increased property value. Did have a comparison there from year before to what it is this year. Compare those two.
Any questions, comment about the thing? Motion?
I'll second
Motion made by Lundy, second by Williams. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
it. Aye.
Post, action to post invitation to quote for occupational therapy, physical therapy, special education, evaluation services, visually impaired services, pest control services, fire alarm and security services, 2020, 2021.
This is a process that we do annually, and we have to post that notice in our local newspaper and follow the guidelines of that process.
I make the motion that we post the invitation to quote for all of those listed under action with discussion item G.
I'll second. Motion made by Reeves, second by Daniels. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Renew membership with Southeast South Central Corporation, 2020, 2021.
Okay, this is the
I'm sorry.
SESC cooperative that provides trainings for our staff and our administrators. Also, they're very informative and a very well-run organization that adds to the things that we do in our school district. And there's a lot of services that they provide for us because we are members of no additional charge. So I would recommend that we renew the membership.
I'll make a motion to approve the SCSC co-op membership for 2021.
Second. Motion made by Williams, second by Lundy. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, approved family medical leave request.
We have two family medical leave requests.
They meet all of the requirements and have all the documentation that's required in.
We have a motion to approve family medical leave. make a motion?
I'll second.
Motion made by Lundy, second by Reeves. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Approved student handbook updates for 2020, 2021. Mr. Carey.
Also, you should have had handbook updates in your packets. Very few changes. Changed the front cover to the 2021 calendar. I added 2 students to the student handbook committee. Those are chosen by class presidents from the previous year. I took the non-traditional instructional days. That came straight from the application that we had to add that to the handbook. And then I added on advice of the safe school people to add the terroristic notification to parents in there too. So it'll be in the handbook and a letter gave to the parents.
Okay, Tim, just a clarification, as far as our student handbook, I'm thinking about that in the same sense as what we were told about new policies and procedures, that it wasn't necessary to do new policies, procedures, or handbook that address a temporary issue, and COVID is supposedly a temporary issue. Is that correct?
The reason, Senate Bill 177 that was passed, that had some COVID related and some additional sick leave provisions, that sunsets June 30th. And the 2 federal pieces of legislation, the expanded family medical leave and the expanded paid sick leave benefits under the CARES Act, those expire the end of this year. So you don't need a policy to adopt those, since the federal statutes and the state statutes are law. All you're doing is complying with a law. So you don't need an ongoing policy to do that.
Okay, so what advice could you give us about, is it necessary for us, and our handbook doesn't outline a particular schedule of the day for kids. So is there anything that you would say that we need to address in a handbook about the instructional day, since it's a temporary and not the normal for our school district? I know that there's been comments about the face mask being part of the dress code, but is it necessary for us to have that in there when it's a temporary issue, as long as we communicate that in some other fashion?
One way of doing that is, let's say once you finally adopt your reentry
Yes.
program, you could do an additional supplement and get that out to the parents
Okay,
and not have to worry about the handbook, because I believe you want this handbook effective July 1st.
yeah, and it's gotta go to print is the
Yeah.
problem, and we know there's gonna be lots of changes from our reentry plan, so that's the reason we wanted to ask specifically. So we'll just do an addendum to the handbook
Yes,
with.
And then get it out just like you do the handbook.
So I need approval of what was in that packet.
We have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the changes to the handbook for this school year.
Motion made by Williams, second by Lundy. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Administrative updates.
We have none.
Okay.
I covered all that in my hour presentation.
Very good.
We're very limited with people that can be in the room today.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you all very much.